The Legend of Zelda is a decade-old franchise for Nintendo, and in 2016, it was revolutionized in Breath of the Wild, taking the traditional Legend of Zelda world and characters that we all know and throwing them into an open world to have the most grandest adventure Link has ever had. And for a lot of people, this was a very welcome transition. With Tears of the Kingdom, it definitely cements the decision that Zelda team wants to take the Legend of Zelda series with moving forward. And I kind of just want to ask the question, is this the only way? Is there maybe other ways that we can take? Nothing against Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. I love that open world, and I think that's probably the best fit for The Legend of Zelda and Link and his adventures. I do have a couple other ideas. Hear me out, you guys. Before you guys start disliking, give me a chance to make my case. If at the end of the video you guys still disagree with me that there might be other approaches that could be really cool for The Legend of Zelda, maybe as a spin-off, maybe as a mainline, but just overall, I want to see Link in a different style adventure. With that, sit back. These are going to be my 3 different styles of genre, video games, whatever, that I think they can take The Legend of Zelda and transition it to a different style of game. If you guys like this style of video, remember to like this video. Please consider subscribing as it does help me out tons. And with that, let's get into the video. Alright, so we all know that Zelda team is the main development. They're the minds and talents behind The Legend of Zelda for decades now. What I don't think a lot of people know is that Monolith Soft is actually a support studio for the Zelda team on games like Breath of the Wild, on games like Tears of the Kingdom. They help in doing things like setting up the world, the landscape, the textures, and stuff like that. And it's very apparent when you play like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and then Tears of the Kingdom, as they kind of have the same kind of a similar aesthetic, similar approaches to the way they build their worlds. So I feel like Monolith Soft knows Zelda at this point, whether it's just creating the worlds, but they've been working really closely for the last decade essentially with Zelda team on The Legend of Zelda. So I feel like they've probably developed some insight on how these games work. And I think if you were to mix that with what they do really good, and specifically in the Xenoblade Chronicles series, in their action RPG style of gaming, I think you can get a Legend of Zelda style game set up as an action RPG. Maybe not in the same way that Xenoblade is set up, where it's kind of like auto attacks and you like layer on different strategies until you have this like big grand connecting link or whatever. I think though, if you were to make it more like a traditional action RPG, something more like the Tales series of these games, I think that Legend of Zelda, Link and his characters have a bunch of lore that RPGs love to utilize. They have great world building, great characters, and something that specifically Monolith Soft does probably better than any other Nintendo studio right now is their stories. And I feel like they will be able to lift up Legend of Zelda's story to greater heights. Not that the stories that Zelda team create are like terrible, but they definitely came out and said that story isn't their forefront, that they focus on gameplay and then story afterwards. And I feel like Monolith Soft definitely has a good handle on creating stories and creating action RPGs. So I feel like that'd just be a really good blend that I kind of really want to see if it'd be possible. Something I think a lot of people don't realize that The Legend of Zelda has in its world and its characters is a lot of like horror elements. I think people think of the adventures and the Triforce and all that stuff, but there's a lot of really creepy stuff going on in this world, from like the skeletons that come out of the ground. They have like that blood moon that comes up. A lot of really creepy, almost like Souls-like elements inside The Legend of Zelda. And even back when I played like Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, there was a lot of really creepy imagery and backstory that spooked the hell out of me when I was a little kid. And I feel like with the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's like survival style of gameplay, I feel like they could mix that in with their horror elements and make a survival horror game. And I think that's something that Nintendo doesn't really have, is their own style of survival horror. Now, I think when a lot of people think of survival horror games, they think of like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, those games that are really more about like shooting the enemies and like collecting items and collecting ammunition and trying to use that sparingly. Well, I feel like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom have a lot of those kind of survival aspects baked into the game, from things like weapon degradation, where you're always consistently switching through different weapons and trying to figure out what works, fusing different items together to see like what's going to come out of it. Stuff like that that I feel like adds really well to kind of almost like that spooky environment. Like if you're getting chased by a bunch of zombies or hordes or something like that, and you don't have enough weapons in your arsenal to take them on, or you're scared of them breaking, or you don't have enough healing items. Again, I definitely think that they took survival in The Legend of Zelda to the next level with Breath of the Wild and and Tears of the Kingdom. I feel like if you were to do something like just amp up the creepiness, maybe make it a darker setting, I think they have a cool idea. I think there's a cool idea there. And I think it's not what a lot of people think about when they think of survival horror, which is something that Nintendo does really well. Like when they made their like shooter game and it's Splatoon, that is completely different than what anyone would have ever expected a shooter to be, and it works so freaking well. So I think, again, maybe not as a mainline game, but like a side game, I think Link like trying to escape Hyrule Castle or something, or even like get deeper into Hyrule Castle to save Zelda. Some really creepy something like that with, again, like ghosts and zombies. They already have like skeletons and weird creepy ideas in Tears of the Kingdom as far as the way the enemies are. I feel like, again, if they just, obviously they don't have to. Obviously this is just me. It's something that I want to see. I just want to see them get a little weird and kooky with it. Overall, I just think that The Legend of Zelda, specifically Tears of the Kingdom, dove a little deeper into some of the creepier ideas and enemies that I think blends really well with survival horror and the whole idea of like not having enough ammunition, not having the right weapons, not having the right just stuff to deal with whatever the hell is in front of you. I think blends really well with the survival horror aspect. Alright, here's the one I think is going to piss a lot of people off. I think Tears of the Kingdom for The Legend of Zelda is the first time that they're really trying to go a little bit more, I don't want to say cinematic, but definitely amp up the drama, definitely amp up the whole scenarios to the next level, to the next degree. I never seen The Legend of Zelda really take this kind of approach, I think, to some of the way that like the setups for some of the levels are, some of the grand fights and some of the cutscenes are set up. I think works really, really well in like a God of War action adventure style game. You know, that third person over the shoulder camera angle would work really, really well in a more linear style of Legend of Zelda game. And for me, I feel like that'll just amplify the whole cinematic drama that I feel like Tears of the Kingdom was kind of trying to have. I know a lot of people are going to be mad. They're like, oh my god, no, Tears of the Kingdom is amazing. I get it. But sometimes when I see these moments happening, I'm like, damn, if only like the camera angles were a little better or the tone was a little bit more serious, I would believe it more. I would like feel more engaged with it or something. Again, I just feel like after playing something like God of War, when it comes to like story and the way it mixes in with gameplay, I feel like that did it so freaking well that it's easy to see why a lot of games want to kind of copy and emulate that, because it just does that so well. And obviously Nintendo doesn't do what other people do. They do their own thing. We get that. But sometimes it's not a bad idea to take ideas from other games, and obviously The Legend of Zelda will never do that. They'll never go there. This is their approach, like essentially for the next couple years or whatever, and I'm cool with that. But just when I think of like what we all wanted from like games like Twilight Princess or something, I feel like God of War, that kind of third person over the shoulder gritty take on Legend of Zelda, on Link, is what people wanted. I mean, at least back in the GameCube era. Obviously now everyone's perfectly content with this open world format. Just me, I don't think Twilight Princess really gave me that darker, gritty story that I really wanted. Just because they made the game darker and muted color did not make it more, I don't know, dramatic and more serious. So for me, I would like to see a God of War style Legend of Zelda. Well, those are all my final thoughts. Before you guys go running and screaming at me saying that obviously these are stupid ideas, whatever, whatever, open world Zelda is where it's at. I honestly 100% agree that Legend of Zelda open world is probably the best format. It's a proper evolution for this game series. I just want to say, imagine Link in different scenarios. I feel like Mario gets to be in a bunch of different style of games, and I feel like Link being their next mascot could probably fit a lot of different genres, as well as just the fact that I think like Nintendo's always looking for new ways to kind of do things and experiment with their IPs, and I just want to imagine. I think these are really cool ideas. Maybe not as mainline, but as spin-off games, I think would be really cool. Anyways, you guys, that's all I have for this video. I'll see you guys on the next one.